All right, everybody. I have the great pleasure of speaking with a really wonderful person, my friend, and a very courageous attorney who, as you know, took on the DNC with his wife, Elizabeth Beck, and Nico House. Jared, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to be here with you, HA. How are you doing?
Good, good. I want to just let everybody know. So you're going to see a lovely picture of Elizabeth Beck, Jared's wife. There were some technical issues, but we have hopefully great sound with Jared. Let me know in the chat if you guys hear us okay. Jared, how you doing?
Oh, well, taking it day by day.
What are your thoughts on, I guess we'll start off with, what are your thoughts on the future of the DNC lawsuit? I know we spoke about this, of course, last time, but any new updates or any kind of anything that you want to share with people?
Yes, actually, I do. So if you've been following the lawsuit, you'll know that the district court issued an opinion dismissing the case for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. And essentially, the court ruled that the plaintiffs in our lawsuit lack what is called standing under the law to pursue claims against the DNC in court. So we filed an appeal with the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which is based in Atlanta and is one of the federal appellate courts below the Supreme Court level. And we are currently pursuing that appeal with the 11th Circuit. Now, the 11th Circuit has already issued two separate jurisdictional questions that have been fully briefed by the parties. So the court is attempting, even before the merits of the brief are briefed, to answer preliminary jurisdictional questions. And so I think this is very good news because it shows that the 11th Circuit is taking this case very, very seriously, because I've done a lot of appeals in a number of federal courts, and I've never seen a federal appellate court pay such close attention to issues of jurisdiction even before the initial brief has been filed. I just want to repeat, it's already issued two separate preliminary jurisdictional questions. And so if you're interested in diving into the precise technical issues in these two jurisdictional questions that the court has issued and that the parties have already briefed, all you have to do is go to the JAMPAC website and go to the DNC fraud lawsuit section of the website, and we put all the documents up there, and you can look at the briefing on either side. But I think it's a very, very good sign because the court is taking the case very seriously. And that's an important thing because Judge Locke, as everybody will recall, in the lower court, took the case very, very, very seriously and had a very substantive hearing at the motion to dismiss stage of the case. And it was at that hearing, HA, that the counsel for the DNC, Bruce Spiva, got up in open court and said that the DNC has the right, if it so chooses, to go into back rooms and smoke cigars and pick the candidates that way. And that was the beginning of the unraveling of the DNC. And it was because, in my opinion, Judge Locke held that hearing. So once again, I just think it's very important that people pay close attention to this case, look at the filings, pay attention to the briefing, what the court is saying in its orders, and hopefully we'll have a hearing in the 11th Circuit, and who knows what's going to happen at that hearing if it happens.
Okay, so if the hearing what are the chances that the hearing takes place?
Well, my experience with the 11th Circuit is that when there are issues of substantial importance in an appeal, the court will hold what is called oral argument, which is where the three judges on the appellate panel for the case have a hearing in which both sides present oral argument based on the briefs that have already been filed. Now, the issues have not been fully briefed at this point. We've only briefed 2 preliminary jurisdictional questions that were sua sponte issued by the court. We are in the process of briefing the issues. We have a deadline now in, I believe, January of next year for us to file our initial brief. And then once we file our initial brief, the DNC will file a response brief, and then we'll file a reply. And if the 11th Circuit so chooses, it can issue an oral argument docket, which puts the case on the docket.
Okay. And so that would mean that it's on again, correct?
Absolutely. The issues are before the court. This time there would be 3 appellate judges listening to the issues as opposed to 1 district court judge, Judge Locke. So, these oral arguments can be very, very interesting, and very, very interesting things can come out at the appellate level.
And Judge Locke, just so people understand, what was the reason was not the initial lawsuit ended not because the DNC didn't cheat Bernie and Bernie Sanders voters out of hundreds of millions. The judge actually stated, yes, that fraud took place, but what was the technicality?
Yes, so this is the issue of standing. And the core holding of the court in Judge Locke's opinion was that the plaintiffs lack standing because just by virtue of giving money to the Bernie Sanders campaign doesn't entitle you to go into court and file a lawsuit based on the DNC's failure to comply with its own charter. And that was one of the arguments that the DNC had raised, among other arguments that I think lack merit. And I think we have very, very strong arguments on appeal. But that was the essence of Judge Locke's holding.
So it had nothing to do with the actual fraud.
Correct. In fact, Judge Locke assumed for the purpose of his opinion that the fraud had taken place, which is the standard that is applied on a motion to dismiss, whether it's a Rule 12b-6 motion or a Rule 12b-1 motion.
And so if it gets seen again by a new judge, the chances of the DNC losing are, would you say, exponentially higher?
Well, it really depends. I mean, it's hard to say. Look, I mean, if things go our way in the appellate court, then what would happen is that the appellate court would reverse the lower court's decision and remand for further proceedings consistent with the 11th Circuit's opinion. And so on the one hand, it would depend on precisely what the 11th Circuit says in its opinion. On the other hand, from a functional perspective, what is most likely is that the case would go back to the stage at which it was at when it was dismissed, and then it would proceed to the next stage. And the next stage, in my view, in terms of the most important stage, is discovery. And of course, discovery is when we start putting witnesses under oath, we request documents, we send out subpoenas, and people have to testify under penalty of perjury.
And how amazing would that be to see Debbie Wasserman Schultz as a witness under oath, or Donna Brazil?
Right. I mean, this is where the rubber hits the road in legal proceedings, is when you raise your right hand and swear under penalty of perjury, and that's how every deposition starts. I mean, a deposition is testimony that is on the record and has the same conditions as testimony in open court.
And would you be able to use WikiLeaks DNC and Podesta emails as evidence?
Well, that's part of the discovery process as well, is authentication of documents. And so we would, by necessity, at the discovery case, in my view, we would be getting at the origins of these documents. We would be getting at issues relating to where these documents came from and how they got into the public domain. And of course, those issues go straight to the heart of what might be referred to as the Russian narrative, right?
Yes.
Those issues go straight to the heart of who was Guccifer 2.0. Those issues go straight to the heart of how did WikiLeaks get its hands on these documents. And so those issues, while not related to the primary claims in the case, in other words, the fraud perpetrated by the DNC, those issues go to other issues of fraud being perpetrated in the mainstream media on the American population as we speak.
What are the chances that, because I think it would set an amazing legal precedent, and I do think that WikiLeaks DNC and Podesta emails should be used as evidence in a court of law because they're pristine and they were written by, you know, the suspects here, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Clinton and all of them.
Right.
But what are the chances that a judge in Florida would allow the WikiLeaks emails to be used as evidence, in your mind?
I think the chances are rather high because
Good.
The WikiLeaks emails, the authenticity of those emails as authentic DNC emails has never really been disputed by the DNC. In fact, the entire Russian narrative depends on those being authentic DNC emails, because the idea is that the Russians hacked the DNC and obtained emails. So if the Russians did that, then those emails have to be authentic. So in a way, the Russian narrative traps the DNC, I think, into this position whereby the emails are necessarily admissible. I mean, that would be the argument I would make at the discovery stage if I were faced with some type of objection. And of course, I would anticipate we would get objections from the DNC. If you go back to the hearing on service of process, I don't know if people remember this, but the DNC, when they were challenging service of process after Sean Lucas dropped dead under what I think are still unresolved circumstances, but the DNC actually challenged the admissibility of WikiLeaks emails that we tried to get into evidence at that stage. And they said that these emails cannot be considered by the court because they were stolen. So this issue has already been litigated at a certain level in our case. We've already gone down that road, not too far down the road because it was a short. The issue actually was reserved by the court. The court actually, if you read that transcript, and we actually put the transcript from the Sean Lucas hearing on the DNC fraud website. I don't know if your viewers know this, but that transcript hadn't been available because we hadn't ordered it. But when we filed the appeal, we actually ordered that transcript and we put it online. So if people want to dig into that transcript, it's also available on the DNC fraud lawsuit. But at that hearing, that issue was raised by by the parties. And I believe Judge Locke said on the record that he was reserving on that issue.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think there's some feedback.
What's that?
There's some feedback. Can you lower the volume just a bit?
Oh, you want me to lower my volume? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a bit. I mean, so you can hear me, but yeah, that's a lot better, I think.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's so this is fantastic. I mean, so this completely obliterates and destroys the ridiculous banter from haters just on the sidelines saying, "Oh, the DNC lawsuit didn't work out."
Well, HA, lawsuits aren't just about the judgments you get.
Yeah.
They're about bringing the truth into the light of day through the court process. And I'm very proud of what we've done so far.
I am too.
I understand that, people are frustrated by the fact that the court dismissed the case, but at the end of the day, are we really talking about dollars and cents, or are we talking about getting to the truth of what the political process in this country is all about? And in my opinion, we've already made some significant headway on that through this case, and I'm convinced we're going to make some more headway as we go through the appellate process. So I would encourage everybody to follow the case closely and read the transcripts if you haven't done that. Read the briefs. Read the appellate issues that are coming up. They may seem technical from a legal perspective, but if you dig into it, I think there are some important issues that are being raised and discussed and briefed by the parties.
And just in terms of, like you said, I mean, this is really about the truth, and it's not just about, like a too big to fail bank just paying a fine. It's not just about the DNC paying, money that it owes. It's about the truth. And I think that, like you said, they already admitted that, if they wanted to, they could have gone to back rooms, which they would never have stated that ever had you and Elizabeth and Nico not forced them to tell the truth.
Right. I agree with that. And, by filing lawsuits, by litigating issues, you force the truth to come out. That's how the legal system works.
I guess what's the time frame for the possible next hearing? Or
so our initial brief is due in January, and then I would give the DNC a month or two to file a response brief, perhaps more. So perhaps briefing would be completed by the middle of next year. And then the court would, if it so chooses, would issue an order setting oral argument, which might be several months in advance. So we'd probably have an oral argument later, perhaps next year, if we have an oral argument. And then, in terms of when the court issues its opinion, after hearing argument, that's really anyone's guess. But typically the 11th Circuit works fairly quickly and efficiently, in my opinion. So we would probably have an opinion by either the end of next year or the beginning of the following year. But that's just guesswork on my part from experience.
What do you think, Jared, of Trump's latest tweets regarding the FBI and Clinton's emails, and the fact that he's publicizing the crooked FBI agents? It's not just crooked Hillary. It's like crooked James Comey, crooked. So many of them are just. It was just a blatant cover up on not just the emails, like everything else. The $10 billion stolen from Haiti. I know that Charles Ortel. He's a great guy. I've had the honor of interviewing him numerous times.
Yeah.
What do you think of the kind of Trump kind of either telegraphing or kind of telling the world that he's pushing for these indictments?
Well, my question though is why haven't they already been indicted?
Yeah, I agree.
Then the next question is, why is this special prosecutor being allowed to conduct a witch hunt against Trump that is whipping up the mainstream media into a frenzy and perhaps paving the way for impeachment proceedings against Trump, which would be a travesty of justice. But I think, personally, my read is that Trump is in a lot more trouble than perhaps people want to admit.
But how so? I mean, my take is that I don't see how he would have to have committed a crime or covered up something. Well, covered up a crime. What they did with Flynn, in my book, is just insanity. They created this narrative that nobody could speak to a Russian because the DNC was allegedly hacked, but they don't even the NSA is moderately confident. They're all full of baloney. They're bluffing, all of them. So the narrative was created based on a lie and a hoax and a myth. And then they said, we can't speak to a Russian. Then, of course, General Flynn wanted to keep his position as national security advisor. So he might have, he lied he didn't tell the truth to the FBI. Then the FBI said, aha, we caught you. You were actually trying to mitigate tensions and lessen tensions with Russia. How dare you? And you lied to us. So now it's this whole, I don't see what Trump didn't collude with Russia, or hack the DNC. So I don't see why, I don't see how he could be in trouble. It's almost like the Democratic Party is making up laws of its own and then saying, look, you broke these laws, but they don't exist.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way of describing it, but let me give you an example. Are you familiar with the concept of resisting arrest?
Somewhat. Not personally, but somewhat, yeah.
But that's kind of in my view, that's sort of one of these made-up crimes that lands people in jail all the time, right? So a police officer comes up to you and is like, maybe gives you a hard time or something, and somebody gets lippy or something, and they say, okay, I'm going to arrest you if you don't calm down. And then the person's like, no, it's like, so arrest me, blah, 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 blah. And then, they get charged with resisting arrest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a BS way of throwing somebody in jail if you want to. I mean, that's kind of like what they're going to charge Trump with, I think, in my opinion, is something like obstruction of justice. And in fact, they're already, because the Flynn thing is a bullshit thing to begin with. I mean, it's lying.
Very much so. I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's lying to the FBI about something that doesn't matter. Okay. Because, people can talk, talking to the Russians, that's what, presidential.
What we've learned from this is selling 20% of U.S. uranium is just fine, but talking to the Russians is no good.
Right. Yes, but then see, okay, so Flynn is charged and he's pled guilty, okay, to lying to the FBI about something that doesn't matter. Okay, now the next stage is to get Trump, right? What do you get Trump with? You get Trump with, well, I directed Flynn to lie, okay, and by directing somebody to lie, you've obstructed justice, okay, which is like a resisting arrest. It doesn't. It's a bullshit charge, just like you said, but it's a way of throwing somebody in jail. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I mean,
that's the road they're going.
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing.
I'm telling you, HA, that he's in trouble. I mean, I want to make that clear because, I think the legal system in this country would allow that prosecution to happen, and it does all the time, and it's no different with respect to Trump. And they're going to use that as leverage to try to get him out of office.
But even that, I guess what I'm saying is like obstruction of justice. Usually, my whole thing with the whole Russia thing is there's no crime that is said to have been committed. So I wouldn't know. I don't know what he would be accused of obstructing.
Yeah, but he's obstructing an investigation. into a crime that was never committed.
Okay, yeah.
That's a crime. You say that's like resisting arrest. You didn't do anything wrong to begin with, but once the police officer started investigating you and you gave him a hard time,
yeah,
and maybe you obstructed him, well, now it's a crime.
Now has he been caught? Because I know that guy Brian Ross for ABC News was suspended for fake news.
Right.
But now, so what did Trump cover up?
Well, I don't know if I think the question is going to be whether he directed Flynn to lie to the FBI, or whether he knew that Flynn lied to the FBI and didn't reveal it. That's what they're going to say.
This is another interesting thing about the whole investigation with Flynn. I view Flynn. See, I voted for Jill Stein, as you know. I view Flynn to be a heroic figure in all of this, because he was one of the first people to come out. It was with Jake Tapper actually on CNN and state that Hillary Clinton should just drop out of the race because of the email investigation and because of the threat to national security. And I quoted that when I was on MSNBC regarding why superdelegates should go to Bernie. But my thing with Flynn is that he had his recordings. The Washington Post already stated that the FBI had recorded his calls. This is before Clinton's monumental political, debacle, and before her losing the election. So it was well known already that they had already taped his call or wiretapped him, and it's just so interesting that they didn't find any collusion with Russia. So then they moved the goalpost to, well, did you speak to the Russian?
Right. Well, I think the thing with Flynn is, don't discount the possibility that he was a deep state plant from the beginning, who was sent on the mission to infiltrate Trump. I mean, the same thing happened with Watergate. I mean, this is like from the Watergate playbook, what's unfolding before its eyes. There's nothing new under the sun, AJ. I mean, there's a great book by a gentleman by the name of Russ Baker on what the truth of Watergate really was. You can actually get it online. He was actually a mainstream media correspondent, New York Times, Washington Post, and he wrote a fantastic analysis of Watergate, which shows that Watergate was actually an infiltration of the Nixon administration by the CIA, which wanted to bring Nixon down. And it was actually a soft coup against Nixon by members of the deep state, led by people like George Bush. And it succeeded because enough pressure was put on Nixon ultimately to resign. I think they're doing the same thing with Trump. And it worked with Nixon. So I don't know necessarily why it wouldn't work with Trump.
Well, I guess one thing with Nixon, and that's plausible, but one thing with Nixon is that he actively engaged in the cover-up.
Right, but I think, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think Nixon knew he was infiltrated and knew that, Nixon was a sharp dude, okay? Nixon was very, very aware of the deep state. And
well, he knew of the plumbers too, though, right?
No, I mean, I think the plumbers were these like CIA spooks that were involved with killing Kennedy, okay? I think my take on Watergate is that these guys, infiltrated the Nixon administration. Of course, Nixon, he had a lot of stuff to do. He didn't quite know what these people were up to. Okay, they fucking did this, half-ass robbery on the DNC at the Watergate. Bumbling shit.
Yeah.
Okay. Why would Nixon have fucking directed that? Okay, it makes no fucking sense, right? Yeah. And then, it turns out that Nixon, realizes that the infiltration in his administration was actually a lot deeper than he had thought, and he just was like, he just gave up. he just gave up. He stepped down. Okay, it was enough to get him out without, you know, the hard coup assassination technique that was employed in 1963 when JFK's brains were blown out.
I think that one thing that when you talk about Nixon, what I always find is, I just think words like treason and all these things, you know, they're used against Trump. And I mean, I can't think of anything more treasonous than what when Kissinger sabotaged the Paris peace talks right before the election, so Nixon could get elected.
Yep, that's a great example. There was a lot of treason in those days.
Yeah, a
lot of treason. And
speaking of treason, what do you think of the uranium deal saga?
Why aren't there prosecutions?
Yeah.
There need to be prosecutions. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is outrageous. I mean, come on. I mean, yeah, Trump should be prosecuting these people. Sessions is obviously a stooge. Nobody likes the guy. Do you know a single Trump supporter that likes Sessions?
No. Sessions is universally disliked. He's probably the most universally disliked person on the left and the right.
Right. So where is the why was he picked to begin with, and why is he still there? I mean, all the people that the Trump base likes, like Bannon and those guys, I mean, they are already forced out. You know, it's only the fucking deep state stooges that are remaining. Is anybody else noticing this?
Well, I think what's taking place actually is interesting. I think that if Tom Cotton, and I'm not a fan of him.
By the way, I went to college with Tom Cotton. I actually wrote he was not that bright in college, so I doubt he's like any bright now. Let me put it to you that any brighter now. Let me put it to you that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of him, but if he goes see the whole thing with Tillerson and Sessions, I think, is that they're more of the establishment type people, and the establishment is deathly afraid of being seen as biased against Clinton if they went after Clinton. Meanwhile, the whole planet like despises her. But I think that if Pompeo, who has a deep-seated hatred for Clinton, because I'm not a fan of Pompeo either, especially with what he said about WikiLeaks and all that. But I think that if Pompeo becomes Secretary of State, and then Tom Cotton becomes CIA director, then you have already Christopher Wray as a Trump hire. You have three people who are directly beholden to Trump, more so than Tillerson. That speeds up the release of her insane classified emails. And then if Sessions just fucking like retires or or something, you get a different Department of Justice person. They don't even have to any day. What was it? Judge Napolitano was saying on Fox, any day, any single day now, they can indict her and it would be completely justified.
No, I don't. I think it's. I take the other view. I think Trump either he overplayed his hand, or or maybe he's not who people think he is, and maybe Trump supporters need to start realizing that. But I don't. I mean, I don't understand the Mueller thing, to give that guy as much power. I mean, we're talking about jail sentences for Trump and his family. Okay, the calculus is changed once you're talking about jail. Okay, we learned that with Flynn, right? The calculus is changed when you're talking about jail time for these people, and now we're talking about jail time for Trump and his family. Okay, and we'll see maybe Trump's willing to go to trial. Okay. Maybe he's willing to do an impeachment proceeding. Nixon wasn't willing to do it. Okay. Bill Clinton was willing to do it, but that wasn't a deep state coup.
Yeah, but look, you might be right. I voted for Jill Stein, so it's not like, I just, like you said, like I would be very angered if he was taken out of office based on a myth when Hillary Clinton actually did commit crimes and cheated Bernie.
But hasn't everything that's happened in politics so far been based on myths in terms of the mainstream narrative that keeps prevailing? Everything is a myth. So why wouldn't the mythology continue? Your theory assumes that, reality is going to set in at some point, and it hasn't set in. I mean, everything we're talking about in terms of purges and QAnon, I think there's a lot of hope there, but, let's be realistic. All we've got is rumor and innuendo. That's all rumor and innuendo.
Well, for example, like I agree with you. A lot of it is smoke and mirrors.
The same thing with the Bernie stuff. Okay, remember in the final stages with Bernie, there were people like, oh, Bernie's playing 4D chess. He's going to get the nomination at the end, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't turn out that way. Okay, but it wasn't. People were hopeful. They wanted reality. They wanted the reality of Bernie Sanders that they were dreaming of, right?
I guess the way I look at it is there are, like, for example, the Gulf of Tonkin. That was fabricated. There were no, at that moment, the Vietnamese didn't fire on our ship.
The government's admitted to that.
Yeah.
Now it's one of the fabrications that the government's forthrightly admitted to.
Exactly. And my thing is that, though, okay, but we were already so far deep into that war within the Cold War, and that just gave Lyndon Johnson, the reason to escalate things, beyond, all rationality, and was absolutely, catastrophe of epic proportions. But I think that a lot of these, like you said, a lot of the, you could be right, and, Trump could be impeached based on this hysteria. I just think, though, that I think it's the Democratic Party. Not that I'm like, I know that I truly believe Trump will get reelected because Democrats are so fractured. There are progressives who hate Democrats more than they hate Republicans. But I just think that when all of these kind of events that I agree with you are fabricated or, not based on reality, there's always some kind of overriding reason. The Trump-Russia thing is based on, Hillary Clinton still clinging to power. And I think that her power is dwindling every day because the Clinton Foundation.
It's not Hillary Clinton. It's the mainstream media. It's those five companies that control the mainstream media that are part of the oligarchy.
But they failed to prevent the Trump presidency.
Right. And so now they're doing everything they can to end it. And they're going to succeed because their narratives always prevail in America. Always.
Hey, look, you might be right.
Inevitability. Remember, they started saying that Hillary was the inevitable candidate.
Yeah.
Okay, remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that? And we were all screaming, what the hell are you talking about? I remember you screaming about it. Okay? What the hell? Inevitable my ass. She's going to lose to Trump. It's obvious to anybody with half a brain cell. Okay? Yeah. Obvious. Okay, I was right there with you.
Yeah.
Okay? But reality didn't prevail, right? The mainstream media of her inevitability prevailed. So now we're going to watch the mainstream media, watch them say that Trump inevitably is going to resign. Okay, and he's going to resign.
Yeah, but the inevitable with Clinton didn't happen though. With the media narrative of what was inevitable with Clinton didn't
No,
happen.
they never said she was inevitable again. Okay, they said that the people, what they said about, okay, they said she was inevitable against Bernie, okay, and then they tried to lie as much as possible and say that the public supported her against Trump. But then there was a vote.
Yeah.
Okay? Then there was a vote. I think there was a secret landslide for Trump. Okay. I think the reality of Election Day, HA, is that Trump got way more, okay, of the popular vote than Hillary Clinton. It just hasn't been reported to us. It's just a lie. It's a fabrication that she won the popular vote. But that was the best they could do, was fabricate the idea that she won the popular vote because the landslide was so huge. That's my theory on how Trump won the election. Okay?
What do you think of what takes place now with the Uranium FBI informant?
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. What's taking place with the Yawan brothers?
Yeah.
What's taking place with the congressional spy ring that's still implanted in Congress? All I see is a guy by the name of George Webb going around busting his ass trying to get to the bottom of that. But other than that, no one seems to care.
What do you think about did you read the book Hacks, or did I know you didn't read the book Hacks, but what do you think of Donna Brazil's book?
I haven't read it. I intend to read it at some point. I'm actually trying to finish up my own book right now.
That's right. How's that going?
Well, I need to turn in the second draft like lickety split. And so I've been working around the clock. I mean, you know, as you know, being an experienced author yourself, you know, the editing process was where the rubber hits the road with this stuff. I mean, it's the most difficult part. You know, so, you know, it's a lot of sleepless nights, but I'm hoping to turn around the next draft to the publisher, and there's a printing date of, or a publication date of January 23rd, I believe. And so if you want to pre-order it,
I'm definitely going to pre-order it.
Oh, I appreciate that, HA. I appreciate that. But I'm hoping to give people the true story of what happened to Bernie Sanders and how that relates to everything else that's going on in our political system right now, because I think there's some deep truths that have yet to be told. And the more people access those truths, the better. So I'm hoping that a lot of people read this book. I'm hoping that it's the kind of book that you can, you know, maybe give your aunt as a present, maybe somebody who voted for Hillary Clinton but doesn't quite know what's going on with the political system. And so they want sort of a coherent narrative based on facts and evidence and documents. And we're going to print a lot of original documents in this book, so people can, you know, buy it as a gift for somebody or buy it as a present to help persuade somebody in your family who's, you know, having a hard time understanding the political situation. So that's the kind of book I'm hoping to write.
If somebody, if you were to be asked, well, I'm asking right now, what did you learn from this process of, you know, being politically active and then being an attorney for the DNC lawsuit? And then, I mean, I see you on Twitter, and you have to deal with the same type of trolls that I do. And and we deal with them oftentimes in the same type of way.
Yeah.
What have you learned from all of this?
I've learned the country's in a lot more trouble than I had ever dreamed it was. And I think our generation, and by which I mean, you know, I'm a Gen Xer. I think we're sort of, you know, maybe positioned to try to do the most to try to make things right in this country as much as possible. I think we have a lot of work to do, and it's a huge collective action problem. that, I think we can make progress on it within our lifetimes, but this is like a multi-generational issue we're dealing with in terms of the political system in this country.
When do you think that as a society we will say enough is enough? We've been at war. We've sent our soldiers since 2001. And whether as a society or as a Democratic Party, or at least when will that voice be heard politically? Like, bring our soldiers home. When will that? Have we forgotten that as a country to say that type of thing?
Well, it may not happen within our lifetime, and I think we have to be prepared to deal with that reality. I think the best that we can hope for is maybe our kids grow up in a more peaceful world, but I think we're going to have to work really hard to lay the groundwork for them.
My thing with Susan, I agree with Susan Sarandon, and I think that it's fantastic that she came out and said that, yeah, Clinton would be worse. And I don't think people understand. I don't think the brain of the average liberal can accept that Clinton would be worse, not because she, they keep saying, well, she wouldn't have pulled out of the Paris Accords and she wouldn't have done this. Yeah, but she would have moved the Democratic Party to the right on war and foreign policy and likely other things. And they don't get that. They don't see how the Democratic Party is Republican light already on the major issues. And she would have just merged Democrats with Republicans even more.
Well, because they understand the world in terms of simple media narratives that are fed to them on programs like The View and The Today Show and Charlie Rose and Matt Lauer and all these, wonderful people in the media, such just wonderful, high, sanctimonious voices that talk about, basic, stupid things that sort of structure their understanding of politics that aren't important things that deal with the actual issues of, how a society should govern itself, especially a complex society. It's impossible to have a conversation with them. They're just in a different framework. They're in a different paradigm. What can I say?
Where do you see 2018 going? I think that Democrats will underperform, but do you think that they'll take back Congress?
Possibly. I mean, what could very well happen is that, so I think Trump's out. I think he's forced out. I think he resigns. I think we get President Pence. I think Pence goes up against some corporate schmucko from the Democratic side. I mean, take your pick. Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren. Take your pick, right? And maybe they even win. I don't know. I mean, it's very possible. I mean, that's what these sinister assholes in the deep state want to happen. They want the two-party system to remain in full force because it keeps the people distracted and easily controlled.
Yeah. Do you think, well, I want to let everybody know I'm actually speaking right now to Randy Credico. He just DM'd me, so he's going to be on in less than 10 minutes. So everybody watching right now, I want you to stay watching. The next segment, Randy Credico is a legend in radio, and he's a very, very strong, extremely strong WikiLeaks and Julian Assange supporter. And I'm going to be speaking with him for an hour in just a couple of minutes. But I guess, Jared, I want to just go ahead and Thank you, and Elizabeth, as always. And I feel like Elizabeth was on here also because every time you spoke, we saw Elizabeth. So, you have a really wonderful New Year's and holiday season, and happy Hanukkah.
Oh, thank you. Same to you, AJ.
Thank you. And you are a hero to a great many people, and I respect you greatly. I think you're awesome, and I cannot wait to read your book.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you for doing what you're doing, AJ. I mean, it's a day-by-day struggle, but one foot forward.
Thank you, Jared. You have a fantastic evening, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care, AJ.
All right, thank you. Everybody watching right now, all 406 viewers, I want you to watch my interview with Randy Credico. That will take place in less than 6 or 7 minutes. Thank you so much for watching.